Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mysterious Galaxy event. I am Nick. I am the digital marketer and director of events for Mysterious Galaxy. Tonight, I am thrilled to be doing a wonderful event. Not only do we have Michelle, our social media coordinator, but we have author Lynn Tan, who probably, if you're here for this event, is the author of Daughter of the Moon Goddess. There we go. I'm blocking my face. Yes, I know there's a slight echo, Tiffany. We're doing what we can for technical difficulties right now, so we're rolling with it. So for those of you who don't know, this is a wonderful fantasy debut novel about the mythology of the Moon Goddess. For everyone who has not yet pre-ordered this book, you can definitely still get it because guess what? It's the book birthday, so you can purchase the book. If you click the link below, it says buy book and get signed book plate in art print while supplies last. You'll get the book, this wonderful art print, which I must say they did a great job doing it. I know my camera's not doing it justice. And again, a signed book plate. Now, again, while supplies last, but right now we're looking good for morning sitting. With that, don't forget also, if you haven't already, go ahead and post your questions at the link below that says ask a question. And when we get to that portion, we will hopefully answer all of your questions. I said questions 1,000 times. All right. Now I'm going to leave Michelle to take it away. Have fun, you two, and I'll see you all later.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, everybody. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
Welcome to the event today. Sue, about yourself and about your book, The Daughter of the Moon Goddess.
Sorry, muted out for a second just now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
If you could please tell us a little bit about yourself and then about a summary of Daughter of the Moon Goddess.
Okay, sure. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited. It's my first reader event. So I think I might have warned a couple of you I could be quite bad at this. So I'm Malaysian, I'm Chinese. I grew up in Malaysia, and we celebrate a lot of these festivals there as well, the Chinese New Year and the Mid-Autumn Festival. I studied something completely different because I was from a practical Asian family, and but writing was something that I always loved, and it was something which I always thought about and went back to. One day I really, really wanted to try. And at that point in time, I was in Hong Kong, and with my family, and I was kind of in between trying to decide what I was going to do, and I had more time in my hands, and I really, really wanted to try to write a book, not just an article, or not just like this draft that didn't go anywhere. I just wrote everywhere. The days we could fly, I was writing on the airplane. I was writing early in the morning, late at night, and this is how Daughter of the Moon Goddess got written. So about my book, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, a lot of you probably heard this already, but it's inspired by the legend of Chang'e, the Chinese moon goddess. It is a story which I've loved since my childhood. Just to recap it briefly, Chang'e was married to Hou Yi, the archer who shot the 10 suns which were destroying the world. And so he was gifted an elixir of immortality. But he did not drink it because he loved his wife and he didn't want to leave her. And Chang'e took it instead, flying to the moon. And this is a story that's often told during the Mid-Autumn Festival, and one which means a lot to me as well. So some say that Chang'e she chose the moon because it was close to Earth, and some said that she was imprisoned there. And for myself, I imagined the latter one. And so I wrote this fantasy about a daughter wanting to help free her mother. And it's a fantasy of immortals and magic and love.
I want to tell you first that I love this story, and when I read it, I couldn't stop being happy and smiley and everything about it. So thank you for this book. I do have some questions for you if you're ready. So what came first for The Daughter of the Moon Goddess? Did you have the character, the plot, or the setting?
It's an interesting one. I mean, the very first things I wrote about the book and is the title, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and the first line. The first line is, "There are many legends about my mother," and these are two things which have not changed throughout the many rounds of edits. And these are the two things from which the entire story was imagined. And so from there, I imagined the character. Going back to the legend, I mentioned that there are many variations, right? And some wondered why Chang'e took the elixir, and some said that, she was doing it to save it from a thief, and some said that she was trying to save it from a tyrannical Houyi to prevent the people from suffering. And it could just be simpler as well, that, she just wanted to become a goddess. And they all left me a little wanting inside, and I always wondered if there was more. And it was just this idea that took root, what if she was also trying to protect not just herself, but someone else, someone who she loved just as much as her husband, Houyi, because I truly imagined them to be. What if Chang'e and Houyi had a daughter? And I just imagined, what a fascinating and yet burdensome heritage that would be, because, inciting the ire of the Jade Emperor and everything. And I also imagined like a daughter filled with, passion and fire, and someone who would, fight, for her mother just as her father did for the world. And
right.
So I guess the character came first.
Well, that's great. No, that's great. So, and she is a very strong character. She is filled with passion, but she has a lot of tenacity, and her perseverance throughout this story shouts so much to everyone. For me, for a lot of other people, for a lot of young women. So is she a character that stayed true to who you thought out when you outlined her, when you first thought about her, or did she change as you were writing about her?
I think I did not imagine that it would be an easy path for her. But I would say that some things got more complex as we went along.
Right.
I'm trying not to add too many spoilers in here, but I think that was something that was kind of I wanted to tell about as well, as in someone who went through hardship and who failed, who maybe didn't do everything right or well, and the ability to really like pull back, and yes, you can be miserable about it for a bit, but then, to really take it in and, emerge stronger for it. And that was something which, I really wanted to write in her personality as well, in her character.
I mean, she is such a great character. Definitely one of my favorites already. So if you don't mind, and I know a lot of people may or may not have already read it, readers are always excited about character pairings, whether they're friendships, enemies, or even romantic. And I'm sure that everyone's going to have a reaction once they finish the book. I'm sure, just like me, we all have that one true pairing. Without any spoilers, were there any friendships and relationships that stemmed out as you were writing Daughter of the Moon Goddess?
Friendships and relationships. Well, the relationship's an interesting one. I believe like love can come about, can manifest in many ways, right? I believe, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's, mental, sometimes it's just something that is completely inexplicable, whether it's soulmates or fate, right? And for Daughter of the Moon Goddess, when I was writing the relationships, I wanted the relationships to be more, I think you might call it slow burn. So, things that grow and take time, where the characters get to know each other, and it is, and I think they develop the admiration, respect, right? Someone asked me before, it was in another chat, basically another interview, that she didn't seem to be attractive, so why were people attracted to her? And I think it was because I didn't want to focus on the physical part. It's not that she's not attractive, but I think that is not her greatest strength, basically, right? There's a lot more to her than that. Basically, in writing relationships, that was one aspect that I wanted to write about as well. And another thing was, when she meets the Crown Prince, they obviously have very different stature. He's the Crown Prince of the Lesser Kingdom, and she fell from the sky. Can't tell anyone who she is, pretty much. So, but so even though it's everyone else, it might seem that, he is more powerful or greater in stature. In the eyes of each other, they do see each other as equals. And that was something which, I really wanted to convey in that relationship as well. And in the subsequent relationships as well. It's not, and then they grow to the stage where they do see and respect each other on the same level.
Right. And I think that that's very evident in the different relationships that you have, even with outside of her and the Crown Prince. From the different characters and side characters that are very evident inside Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And I thought that there were a lot of good parallels, a lot of good, opposites. And it was really nice to see that throughout the whole story.
I really wanted to have a lot of, there are also difficult people in the book, but I also wanted to have a lot of positive relationships as well, like friends who really support each other, who look out for each other. They will still have their own priorities, and you may not tell them everything because you want to protect them, or maybe you just can't, right? And I think is also respecting that and still being there for each other. So supportive relationships is definitely one part of it as well. And and in her relationship with her mother, it's also a little. It's not a perfect one because, China is suffering from heartbreak. She is, keeping to herself, and, she doesn't, she's in emotional pain, right? And I think, Singin basically is someone who is empathic and, it still is able to respect her mother's, need for privacy, or to be able to basically deal with it in her own way. So it's really about, supportive and respectful relationships. And yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the fantasy elements of the magic system specifically. It's very romantic, I feel like, the way that everything flows out from her and even from the different characters. Can you tell us a little bit about how you built this magic system specifically?
Well, I would say that the base of it is elemental. There are many different groupings of the elements. For example, I think, the Chinese do have 5 elements, which also include metal and wood. But for myself, I decided to go with, these 4 elements of fire, water, air, and earth, and also the other 2 as well. And I think there's a little bit of symbolism in the magic. Firstly, which is not strict or rigid. For example, people in different parts of the immortal realm would have different affinity to types of magic. For example, Li Wei is very powerful, but he is strongest in fire because his mother is, from the Phoenix Kingdom, and she has a scorching temperament. So, because from the Phoenix Kingdom, the people there are also more adept in this kind of power. And for Wenxue, I wanted it to be, something that suited his personality more, something more cool and for like a fluid, and a contrast to Li Wei's one as well. So that was water. And for Xingyan, what I really liked about the idea of including air into it is the ability for her to manipulate like wind or air, because it fits in really nicely with her abilities as an archer as well. And I really liked that element, that to tie it all together that way. And the other thing that, I thought about the magic was I wanted there to be constraints to it. I thought limitless power might be, well, a lot of catastrophe going on there.
Right,
and
right.
So it's not so much. It's sort of like magic has a cost, but in this way, it's quite a literal cost. So if you were to think of it in terms of like RPG games, you have a health bar and a mana bar.
Yes, exactly.
So something like that. So basically, so when they have to use their magic, it is not just like, I have this great ability, I'm going to use it now. I think you need to think a little bit like, is this the best use of it? Or, is there a more strategic way or opportunity to use it as well? So, these are some of the elements. And I noticed that you mentioned something about like the romantic part of it. There's also an element where the healing comes in, and I think that one where someone can give part of your energy to somebody, even if it's temporarily. And there's also like an element, it's done through touch as well, so that's also, I guess, a slightly romantic element to that.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Just the relationship between the characters and their type of magic that they had, or even how they used it or how they chose to use it, was very, very, very interesting and specific. And I thought added a different layer to the story and their journey in what they had to do.
Yes.
You mentioned wind, and specifically to her ability for archery, but also she has this affinity for flute music. And I thought that was very interesting.
The music. I really like music, but I'm not very good at it. So Well, when I was growing up, I would watch a lot of Chinese fantasy dramas, and I loved a lot of elements about it. I loved the flowing garments, those beautiful
Uh-huh.
forests and everything, right? And one of the elements that I loved a lot was the music, right? There would be people playing those guzheng or the qin instruments or
Mm-hmm.
or the flute, and and it is just something that always stuck with me, like the whole like imagination of that, right? And I even learned it for a while when I was a child, but I was terrible. I was really, really bad at it. And I also learned the Chinese instrument as well, but again, not very well. But these were instruments where I personally loved the sound of it as well, and it was something that I wanted to incorporate in the music. And I also believe that music has the ability to make you feel a lot of things. For example, when I don't write to music. I write when it's more quiet. But when I need to get in a particular mood, then sometimes I'll listen to music beforehand because I find that sometimes the rhythm or the tune or the lyrics has the ability to stir me to be
Right.
able to write.
Like
So
it
and
sets a
that and
theme.
Yes, yes. Like sometimes you listen to like a very sad song, or sometimes you listen to like a very rousing song for when you're writing a battle or something. And that was something which I also incorporate in the book a bit, like when how she's feeling, that it's also conveyed a little bit through the music as well.
Do you, while you said that you prefer not to listen to anything as you're writing, but during those moments that you did want to listen to something, is there anything specific? Was there an artist? Was there a specific genre of music that you wanted to listen to?
I don't. There are certain songs that I like, and I guess it depends what I'm doing. Like if I'm watching a drama at a certain point in time, and I really like the theme song, then it's gonna go on autoplay. For example, there was a stage I would really like the Untamed, and so there was the theme song, the One True Pairing song, Wang Xian. That
Uh-huh.
was I listened to that a lot.
That's a
I
great
love that
soundtrack.
song. It is such a great song, and the way that it was sung as well, there was a lot of emotion in it, and I just loved it. I loved how I don't know, it just felt wonderful, basically.
So
And
some
yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, and this is probably slightly a song that's older back. There's this song by Adele called "Make You Feel My Love," and that makes
Mm-hmm.
me feel very nostalgic whenever I listen to that one. So I mean, there are different types in
Okay,
there.
so you saying that song to a specific part in the story, it makes so much sense now.
No, well, certain times if I feel like I need to get in a mood, then I'll do it. But when it comes to actually writing, it needs to be quite quiet for me, which can be challenging.
Yes, yes. So I want to ask you some writing specific questions if you don't mind. Do you consider
Sure.
yourself to be a plotter or a pantser?
I think I'm slightly more on the pantser line. Definitely when I was starting out. I think when you're starting out, you don't really know a lot about these things, right? I didn't study writing or anything, but so what I do basically, or what did in the beginning, is I drafted an outline to make sure the plot holes make sense and it flows nicely. And when I write, um, I tend to write quite instinctively because I feel that the characters tend to change and things
Mm-hmm.
tend to change and evolve as well, and I like to make room for that. So, and then when I wrote the second book after Draw the Moon Goddess, after hearing of all these great drafting techniques, I set out with a very ambitious draft. I drafted everything. I drafted every chapter. This is what's going to happen, and this, and all the way till the last bit. And then when I started writing it, I ended up spending more time going back to fix the draft. It was like I wrote chapter 3. Oh no, all the stuff changed. Okay, go back now and fix the draft. So
Were there
yeah,
any specific characters in the first book that you had to write back because as you were writing them, they would change?
I think I always go like well after I finish it, and you go back and whenever you edit it as well, you can read through the entire manuscript again, especially in the early stage. And that is when I usually take the time to start thinking about how the story went or how the characters developed, because then it's pretty clear in your head. And I think that's why the editing stage is actually useful, because so much changes during the process. As you said, it can be quite hard to keep everything in track. And so during those stages, then because you already know what's happening, then you use that to link back, and then you might end up having to do a lot of rewriting. I tend to edit quite aggressively, so I tend to end up doing a lot of rewriting during the editing phase.
Did you always know how the Daughter of the Moon Goddess was going to end and how the second book will end? Or did you change that based as you were writing?
Well, I wanted it to be a duology, And I was very happy that when I spoke with my editor, David from Harper Voyager, that he had the same vision for it as well. I I knew that I didn't want it to be a cliffhanger. So I wanted to tie up, enough things, but leave some questions as well, because, there's still a lot of the realm to explore, and her story is not finished yet. I'm actually editing it right now. So I have a sign saying like no spoilers. I always imagined it being two books, and I'm very happy that I get to tell both stories.
Well, we love it already. So I want to ask a fun question, if you don't mind. Once you have submitted for deadline, and once you submit for the deadline for the second book, what do you normally do for self-care or for just replenishing of your creativity?
Wow, I have forgotten what that feels like. It's been a very hard few months, but very exciting. Okay, I did have a little time over the Christmas break, so a few days. That was great. I like to go outdoors because when you write, I like to write in the silence, so usually it's here. So I spend so much time indoors at home that whenever I can, I love to go hiking. There are a lot of like mountains here, or walking, or just something outside, or spending time with family. I like eating as well. I'm from Malaysia. We're very big on food. So I love exploring like new restaurants and that. I like reading too. And I wish, and that's something that I really wish I had more time these days, in between editing and, marketing and book release, right? So.
Right. Was there anything that you love to eat? I know that food was mentioned in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which I appreciated. Was there anything that
all those dishes?
Oh, amazing.
No, well, coming from Malaysia, you have the exposure to many different types of food. So there's a lot of fantastic Chinese food and Indian food and Malay food. I have a very spicy palate. I love spicy food. So I really, really like all that. And now that we've moved to Hong Kong, there is so much wonderful Chinese food as well. So when I write the dishes, I'm actually imagining them like, right there.
Well, they're very vivid descriptions, and I'm always hungry when I was reading bits and pieces mentioned.
It's good to know.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to some crowd questions. So if you have any questions for Sue, go ahead and enter it in. So Joanna asks, what made you choose this legend to write about specifically?
Well, it's a legend that I always loved growing up. I think since it's a big part of the annual Mid-Autumn Festival, and it's one of my favorite festivals. In fact, one of my first memories of Changa's is like seeing this image of the goddess on a mooncake tin. They used to have them painted and embossed, and she was in her swirling garments flying to the moon. And then I heard the story, and something about the story, there was just, it's a story of heartbreak at the end, because in the end, she's flying to the moon and leaving her husband. There are other variations that have come up, but that was the one that I heard. And I always felt very sad hearing it. And it was something that always like stuck with me, and especially more when I heard the different versions of the story as well. So it was a story which really lingered with me. It's one that I loved a lot. And I just really wanted to write about it in a different way. So it's something that means a lot to me.
Perfect. Amazing. So the next question is from Elle. What part of the book was the most fun to write?
Oh, part 3. I should have hesitated a bit more.
No, that's a great part.
Yeah, a lot of, I enjoyed part 1 as well, because I think it's like getting to know the world. And I think whenever you get to know a new world, there is a little bit of setup and getting into it and building it up. But part 3 was interesting to write.
Yes,
unfortunately, I can't say more.
Yes, part 3 is amazing.
I had a few complaints about books being thrown on the floor. So,
I can concur to that. So Timothy asks, with Chinese mythology, are there different versions of the same legends and stories, like Greek, indigenous, etc.? If so, how did you navigate a narrative that worked for you?
Well, there are many versions of the Chang'e one. I mean, it's the one of Chang'e and Hui, the different versions of why she took the elixir. There are also versions of the origin. Like some said that they weren't mortal, but they were originally like gods who infuriated the Emperor of Heaven and were cast down to the mortal world. And the ending also completely differs. I mean, some say that, Chang'e is still alone on the moon, and some say that, Hui might have ascended and, built a palace on the sun. So there are all these different versions. And in this one, I wanted basically to something to show her in a more human light, for a reason that we can all understand why she would take the elixir, because it was not an easy decision, because I believe that she was in love with her husband, and I think that is something which comes across in the tale as well. I mean, Hoyi did not want to take the elixir because he loved his wife, and it was always said that Chang'e, when she flew to the moon, she missed her husband very much. And and Hoyi afterward laid out all these offerings for her on the anniversary of her leaving, which apparently started the tradition of this Mid-Autumn Festival as well. And so I believe that they were in love, and I really wanted to think about a reason that was compelling enough and understandable and human enough that we would understand it as well. And I intentionally chose the version where she was sent to the moon and punished in that sense, because I really wanted it to be a quest of her striving for her mother's freedom, as opposed to another version of the legend which says that she chose the moon because it was the closest place to our world.
And there's so many versions that are in the media now, which is so great.
Yes.
And I love it, in different types of media. I mean, as someone who has always wished that these books were available as I was younger, like I loved all the different variations of them as well.
Yeah, they're so fun to read. I think, and I always wonder how do all these different versions come about as well. And I think maybe it could be also that people just want, because I guess folktales, there's no way to prove anything. There is no history, there's no research, and they're usually very brief. So there is a lot of space in that which can be told as well and retold. And sometimes I think, as you said, some people tell a version to fit the narrative or what they want to believe, right? And yeah.
Right. And I believe also, like, I appreciate the map that you included in the book, because it allowed me, and I'm sure for readers as well, to picture where everything takes place for those who are not familiar with the areas. Did you choose, I'm not 100% familiar, but is the placement of the map something that you chose?
I drew, I sketched the map. Oh, I wish I had a sketch. I wish I could show you the sketch. I don't know where I put it. I'm not very organized. So I remember my editor asking me, as in the original sketch. I wanted to show you the original sketch, but I really can't find it.
Because the map is gorgeous.
The map artist took my, less professional and very messy sketch, basically, right? And she rendered it into the more professional, like beautiful looking thing you see now. But yeah, so I did kind of sketch this and that, the placements of it, right? So yeah, that was a fun part.
The map is gorgeous, and it's so nice to see, especially as the different parts of the story, to see where she has traveled from, where she's planning to go, and everything, especially once they get to part 3.
I also wanted to include the mortal realm as well, because I thought that was a really nice, part thinking about it, like you have the mortal realm above and the mortal realm below. So yeah,
but it makes it a little bit more tangible and easy to relate to.
Yeah.
So Nikita has asked, if you were of the celestial realm, what elements would you want your talent in?
Wow. Let me think about that one. Oh, I wouldn't. Technically you can't have them all. But I think I would like one of the other ones, the ones that were not the element ones. I wouldn't mind like having the healing power, or the power related to mind as well. I think those would be definitely more interesting, because I don't imagine myself being a warrior and fighting a lot, which is where I think the elemental magic really comes into play there. So I think I would prefer one of the other ones.
All of them. I like wind, especially.
If you can use a bow, it's very useful.
Nikita has asked, if you could summon a cloud in the heavens, where would you visit first?
Wow, so many places right now. I haven't traveled in so long. Oh my goodness. No, because it's been very hard for us to travel since the pandemic because where I live is pursuing a zero COVID policy, so it makes it very difficult. I want to see my family. I haven't seen my family for like years, and yeah, I think that's the first place I want to go. So I would go to Malaysia and see my mother and sister, and eat to my heart's content.
Oh, all the food. I agree with that.
Yes, and then I'll go and see all the other parts of the world that I haven't been able to see in the last like 2.5 years or something. Where would you go?
I am from the Philippines, so I would go back to the Philippines.
Yeah, there's something
and then
about
eat all the
home,
food
right?
as well.
Yeah, pack it all in the cloud.
Yeah, 100%. Elle would like to ask, how did you come up with the character names?
Well, I liked the name of her because the mother is the moon and everything, and I liked having the name Star for her, and it was something to do with the images that I saw in my mind. So that was how I came up with those names, right? And so there's a little bit of like meaning and a little bit of like how they sounded as well, and that differs to and that's for the characters. But for the names of the places, that was actually a lot of fun because I would imagine the places in my mind, and then I would just try and think of the name which would capture it, right? And I really like how descriptive a lot of the names come out when you look at them from Chinese to English. They don't mind very long names. Courtyard of Eternal Tranquility.
Yeah. Do the names as you started to write them and as they have individual meanings, did you purposely choose specific names for specific characters?
I did choose for some of them like specific name, but for some other names, I think I was just going with basically like names names that I thought like the sound of, and then but a lot of it was also it's like a combination. You look at the meaning and then you look at the sound of it as well, and what you think actually fits the character personality that you're trying to write. And there is an occasion sometimes I will write a character name and I will change it because I think if it doesn't fit halfway through. So that is something which adapts as the story evolves.
Right. So for your characters and their names, were there specific smaller characters or supporting characters that had a bigger impact on the story than you originally thought?
Smaller characters with a bigger impact on the story. I hadn't really thought about that one yet. Well,
because there are a lot of great side characters or supporting characters, just even from
yes. I guess one of them would be the Prince of the Eastern Sea. I mean, he comes in for a little bit, and without any spoilers, he does play a role in the end as well. So that is one element of it. And her friendship with her friend, she's not really a minor side character. She's more of a larger side character, and the relationship that they build and develop and grows, and she comes in at a very important and crucial point, toward the ending again as well. So being very vague here.
Yes. I think that a lot of the relationships that mostly the friendships that she has for the different various characters that go throughout the different parts of this book, I think are so interesting and so individual from each other that no same friendship is the same, and that she gets so many different things, whether it's support and additional strength or even comedic relief. And that's such a great thing in a story, even within a fantasy story with different elements. And was it easy to organize all of those friendships or all of those character sidelines together as you were still writing and plotting that main thought?
When I was writing it, basically, I didn't really like have all the individual kind of like thoughts. It was really something which evolved with the story. I mean, there were certain things which I had in mind, like her friendship with Shucha, I really wanted to be a close one, and her friendship with the Eastern Sea Prince as well. That one is platonic, although I've had questions about that one. I just really wanted it to be people who just liked each other, respected each other, and that's as far as it goes. and because they're also different, I guess they're also evolved in certain ways. Like she can be more formal with her friend, who is her like a comrade in the army and everything, as opposed to someone who is of royal family, right? So they all have different elements, and they evolve in different ways too.
Right.
And there's also her friend, like, and I think it's also important that she's friends with everyone basically, right? Whether it's the girl who's helping her with her meals, or anyone, or like the prince, right? Or even her good friend who she meets in the army. And I think that's something, she treats them all the same way.
Was it difficult to write her relationship with the Empress?
That was actually kind of interesting to write. I actually quite enjoyed it. I liked, because I was just trying to think about it. I mean, there are all these different stories again about the sunbirds, where they were from, and and some say that they were the children of the Empress of Heaven. Again, there are many variations of that. So there are links to her as well, and so I wanted it to have a lot of tension in the relationship, and tension which some characters don't know about yet either, because the Empress doesn't know who she is at that point in time. But whereas she's feeling it herself, because she knows basically what happened to the sunbirds, and she also knows that the Empress is disapproving of her relationship with the sun, in terms of serving the sun and everything, right? So there were a lot of different elements which came into play, which I really enjoyed writing. It was a very fractious kind of relationship, and yeah.
I will admit, reading about their interactions has been a lot of fun. Just seeing how she would react to the Empress and what she would do, either for. We do have another question. Were there any portions of the story that you wish made the final product in the book, but also what ended up on the cutting board of the draft?
Wow, there are some things, but I can't say them right now. They're related to part 3.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, yes, quite a lot of part 3.
I will have to ask you.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, another question. Bianca, did you experience living in different countries? Did your experience of living in different countries come into play in some way other than food?
In terms of the book, well, I've lived a lot in Asia. I mean, I studied overseas and everything, and I think I really enjoyed wherever I go. I really like to spend time outdoors and see the different sceneries. I used to have a section on my website with some of my pictures. I think I've taken it off now, but it's things like the bamboo forest in Arashiyama, or seeing the river full of boats in Vietnam as well. So, and I spent some time in China as well when I was doing some work there, and I think using the weekend to travel to palaces and all the different sites and the food and the streets and everything. I think so when I imagine some of these places as well, I use some of these images in my mind and part of the whole celestial element, when you have like clouds and like fantastical like flora and fauna and everything. And I think I use part of it to create the celestial kingdom, and definitely in the mortal realm as well.
That's amazing. Let's see. Another question that we had is, what are some upcoming books that you are excited for?
Oh, there's so many. Well, I read as in 2022 books that are not out yet. Well, okay, I'm really excited. For Portrait of a Thief. I'm reading it right now. I think it's wonderful. The characterization is very nuanced. The writing is very lyrical. It's a very good read. That one's by Grace Lee. I'm excited for Only a Monster by Vanessa Len as well. It's a young adult fantasy. One for All by Lily Lanos, and it's a Three Musketeer gender bent retelling, which sounds wonderful.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. And I'm also really interested. I really want to start reading soon Deep in Providence. It's supposed to be a fantasy horror. So when I'm feeling brave enough. No, but I'm definitely very, very eager to read that arc of that one. And there's so many sequels, wonderful sequels coming out, which, I can't wait. I can't wait for the sequel to She Who Became a Sun. Probably gonna like cry buckets over it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I really want to, and I also really, and I finished reading Once Upon a Broken Heart because I finally had some reading time for the holidays, and I want to read the sequel to that too. I read broadly. I read both young adult and adult as well, and sometimes, I enjoy a good romance as well. So sometimes I'll read romance.
Do you have any recommendations?
Well, one on my list, which I really have to read, is The Love Hypothesis.
Yes.
I think we've been seeing that one everywhere, right? But I mean, I read a lot of romance when I was younger, but these days I try to keep it more fixed on fantasy. But if there's fantasy and romance in it, then I guess it's kind of then I'm there.
You mentioned The Untamed earlier. Are there any other Chinese dramas that you would like to recommend?
Oh, I liked Ashes of Love. I don't know if anyone has watched that one. There's a lot of angst. There is a lot of angst in that one. Warning you right now.
Yes, there is.
Chinese dramas also tend to be very long, so make sure that you have a lot of time. No, but that one is beautiful. I thought it was beautifully done, and there's a lot of emotional tension in there as well. And The Untamed was good, but recently there just has not been a whole lot of time. Unfortunately. No. Yeah.
When can you tell us when the next book will be slated to come out? Will it be 2022 or 2023?
It's actually coming out oh my God, it's coming out this year. It took me a bit of adjustment. I was like, which year are we in again? It's supposed to come out in fall 2022, hence the editing schedule right now. So I'm working on the edits. We hope to share more information about that soon. So very, very excited.
So exciting. Is there anything else that you're currently working on that will be slated out in the near future, maybe?
We're getting the secret project zone now.
Oh, okay.
Well, I do have a work in progress that I'm working on. It is fantasy with the romance as well. Slightly, well, it's not much I can say on that right now.
Oh, don't worry.
But I hope to share more on that soon. I just wish it was progressing faster. It is going very slowly. But I'm very excited about it, and I really hope to share more information about that soon.
Oh, that's amazing. Does anyone have any other questions while we have Sue with us? Oh, David Pomerico said that...
Oh no, he's my editor. You're watching!
They sent the map sketch to your email.
Thanks. I'm not quite sure how to show it. Oh my God, I didn't know he was on. Oh dear, forget what I said about the editing. It's all going great.
When you're in editing mode, do you normally close yourself off to everything else and try to get into the zone?
Yes, I mean, ideally I do, because, I think that's the time where I really want to let the story sit in my head. And that's the time where I want to ask myself the big questions, whether, am I happy with how this is going? Am I happy with, how this, character arc is going as well, right? So ideally, I like to block out pieces of time where I can be undisturbed and, it's quiet. But I will say that, during certain periods of time, like now, it is a little more challenging because, there's also a lot of stuff in your mind. So even though you're alone, you have all these voices in your mind as well, which doesn't quite help.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Sue, thank you so much for having us today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. This was wonderful. Thank you so much, Sue. It's just listening about all of that. I like it. A bunch of the booksellers here at the store are like reading this or have read it. I think I might have to add this to my ever-growing pile of books to read. I think the struggle, it never ends.
Yes, absolutely.
And as a reminder for everyone that joined us, if you haven't already, please do go ahead and click the button below, buy the book. We still have, as of right now, signed book plate allocations, as well as the wonderful art print that is here for it. And also, if you want to, we have a sci-fi fantasy book crate, which Daughter of the Moon Goddess is our chosen book for this month's book crate. Even better. Well, thank you so much. Oh, lastly, though, Sue, where can people find you on the social medias?
Well, I spend most of my time on Instagram. It's the same handle as my name, Lynn Tan. I'm also on Twitter, and I have a website, but that doesn't get updated that regularly.
Fair. So
It's on the
find you on
to-do
Instagram. Well, with that, I think we'll bid everyone a adieu. Thank you again, Sue. This is wonderful. Michelle, thank you so much for moderating. Great questions. And everyone, I hope to see you all for the next event, and have a great evening, or wherever you're at. Have a good day.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much for having me.
Thank you,
Oh,
Sue.
thank you so
Pleasure.
much.
This is really so fun. Thank you.
It was our pleasure. Bye.